Got a couple announcements here before we get Heidi up here and giving us her talk. First of all, I want you to notice that I have a clean new hat on. It's the only thing now that when I go out in public that I'm allowed to wear it because the other one was old and beaten up. And she came here tonight specifically to check up on me with that. So,
make sure you swap the old one back out again.
A couple things. We've got another new guest here tonight, Bobby Davis. Bobby is you are a professor now, right?
No.
Or not quite?
Not quite. I'm a postdoc at UWSP. It's like a resident in a hospital, but for academics. So I'm not quite a professor. I'm like in training.
But anyway, Bobby is involved with Healing Waters. He got in touch with me last month, and we talked for a while. And what he's really looking for is hopefully some of us can help with volunteer time. We're not fundraising or anything like that, but he is trying to set up some groups that you do some fly tying and you do some casting. And
Yeah, so is it okay if I...
Yep, here, grab this.
Project Healing Waters is a group that uses fly fishing as a tool to create communities for veterans. The participants have to have a disability rating from the VA, so they're all veterans and they all have some kind of disability. And the three core activities that we do are fly casting, fly tying, and rod building, and then of course like actually going out and do fishing outings and stuff like that. So at this point, I'm gauging interest in the area to see if it makes sense to start a program. But I'm going to reach out to Healing Waters and start kind of going down that road. I've already talked to Craig at Fall Line Outfitters, and he said we can have the meetings there. So if you're interested, in the back of your mind, I think that meetings will be in Stevens Point. But hopefully in the next few months, I'll have more details, and I'll make myself a regular face around here to keep bringing this up. And so you guys can talk to me about it if you have any questions.
Thanks, Bobby. So Bobby will be getting information to me, and if anybody's interested, they can just contact me, or you can even contact me through our website. If you send an email into that, I usually get it. So speaking of the website, we have an event coming up on the 21st. We also have an event coming up on the 20th. The 20th is Taylor County Youth Days. We're looking for people to help out with fly tying, casting. I'll probably do the casting because fly tying, I still need instruction. So, but we would be looking for volunteers for that. I know Bob, you've gone. John, you have. Henry is gone. It's a good time. It's their fourth graders throughout public and parochial schools get a day off to go do things that are outdoor related. So it's a nice event. We've been doing that for years. So Linda's looking for people to help with that. So if you're interested, you can either get a hold of Linda or myself, and we'll maybe put out some information on that. So on the 21st, we're going to plant 2,100 trees on the Prairie River. Luckily, we've got the tree spuds to dig the holes with this year. So between what the DNR has and we have, we should have 9 or 10 of them. But we also are looking for people to kind of RSVP for us on our website so we can get a head count because we do want to provide some food. So that will start at 8:30 and go till noonish. Yep. So hopefully get a lot of people out there. Last year we had people come from the Green Bay chapter too, and I think they're probably going to come again. So I will definitely be there this year. Last year I could not make it, but I'll definitely be there. So that's yep, there's a Saturday. Huh? Yes, of this month. We don't plant our trees on Arbor Day because the ground's still frozen around here. So, but anyway, the other thing is I made a plea the last couple of meetings. I'll make a plea again. We're looking for people to help out with our board. We're looking for somebody to take over the financial end of it, the reporting and the checkbook and the whole game. So we're looking for an individual with that. We're looking for people that are interested in being on the board, and we're especially interested in grooming anybody who thinks that they might want to someday become vice president or president. So we're anyway, so I'm going to make that plea again and again, but we do need the help. We actually want to grow our board so that individuals have more of a specific responsibility instead of a lot of responsibilities, so that they can become, we become a better group when we do things with more expertise than when it's spread around too much. So we're looking for that. That being said, got a wonderful presenter tonight, Heidi Oberstadt. And Heidi, I'll screw up your bio, so you might have to do that for us. Anyway, but Heidi's. Could I introduce her? You could, yes. Yeah.
All right. Right?
Yep.
Yeah, cords everywhere.
It's okay. We're good. Thanks, Kirk. I talked to a guy on the phone here last week, and his name's Dan Holland, and Dan called me up and just said, "How in the world did you get Heidi to come to Wausau?" I said, "Well, we asked her," and she said, and here she is. Heidi, Dan told me the story, and it may or may not be true. So Heidi, you can do anything you want. How's that? And what happened was Dan ran into you somewhere and got talking about Trout Unlimited and the Hornberg chapter, and said, "I need help." And you said, "Well, what can I do?" And the rest is history, And I think that's somewhat accurate.
That's actually true.
That's actually true. Well, Dan told me the truth for once. Anyway, and I think he's probably going to be watching this. So, but Heidi's been involved in Trout Unlimited in pretty spectacular ways over the years. Not only in her own chapter, but also in the state, and served on the National Diversity Board as well, and done some other things in there that escaped my mind. But she's been very, very busy, very strong proponent of cold, clean water and trout, and it's really an honor to have Heidi with us tonight. So we get the curly girly point of view tonight. So Heidi, welcome.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. And this is such I call this curly weather because it's so humid. This is very curly lately. Well, yes, that story was true. Actually, Dan Holland is how I got involved in Trout Unlimited the first time. His wife was the chair of my department in my undergraduate studies at school. And so that's how I ran into him. And he was talking about trout and clean water. And I grew up with a single mom, and we didn't do a lot of fishing. In fact, I didn't like fishing because I thought that the fish had sad eyes, and I didn't want to touch the worms. It's a very girly girl. And I was like, well, I don't really know anything about trout or stream health. I thought that was kind of interesting. And I did a bunch of pictures for the Frank Hornberg chapter of their stream projects, kind of before, during, after. And I was like, this stream looks fine. What's wrong with it? And then they explained to me about how the restoration needed to be done. And then when I got all those photos done, I said, well, what are you going to do with these photos? And they said, well, we'll put them on a board at our banquet. And I said, well, why don't you put them on your website? And they said, what website? I said, well, I'll just build you a website. So I put together a website. And as a thank you for my work on the website and the photos, they gave me a scholarship to fly fishing school and my first fly rod. I actually should have put that picture in this presentation because it's adorable looking back. I'm holding this fly rod that I won, and I don't even know how to hold it. I'm like, what am I going to do with this thing? Well, that started a a long, wonderful history that you're going to hear a little bit about tonight. But for those of you who don't know me, and those of you online that I don't know you, I'm Heidi Oberstadt. I'm a communication professional, communication consultant. I do commercial photography. I'm a mom of 2 boys, a wife. I travel a lot. I'm the diversity coordinator for Wisconsin TU, and I'm the Upper Midwest Regional Diversity Coordinator for the Upper Midwestern states. And I actually served as a consultant for National Trout Unlimited when they started their women's initiative back in 2013. And that women's initiative has kind of merged and changed and is now what we call diversity initiative. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of diversity that we can kind of approach into you in a little bit. But oh, yes, thank you. So I kind of have 3 things I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to start with some diversity things about TU and the goals and where I'd like to see our chapters move. Then I'm going to tell you some of my favorite fish tales. And then I'm going to tell you a few tips about ways to document your fishing in creative and fun ways. And a quick note, most of you that are here in person already can tell this, but this presentation may run shorter than normal or end abruptly, as my 11-week-old Benjamin Russell is in the back corner there. So if you hear a newborn crying, he's mine. And of course, I had Trout in his newborn photos, right? I had to. So the diversity, equity, and inclusion update. National TU just updated their strategic plan for the next 5 years, and diversity, equity, and inclusion are included right there in our organizational plans for the future. So as a reminder, for those of you who do not spend all your time watching TU podcasts and broadcasts about the strategic plan, TU values are resourceful, science-based, collaborative, inclusive, united, and hopeful. And so the inclusive part is what I really want to talk about tonight. And TU's definition there, that means that we listen to, value, and respect all people and communities, and we seek diverse voices and perspectives. And to harness the collective power of TU and move more fully over the next 5 years, these are the 3 goals, the way that they organized it. So the first goal is identifying a national network of shared priority waters for native and wild trout and salmon, and then taking the strategic action to care for and recover those populations. The second thing is inspiring a diverse core of staff, volunteers, and partners to advocate for and participate in the care and recovery of our lands and waters. And then the third thing is investing in systems and people, the staff, volunteers, and partners, so that they have the tools, technology, training, and resources necessary to achieve those 3 goals. And so the diverse part there, I know this is a little bit intimidating for a lot of people, and tackling diversity issues can be overwhelming. One of the largest issues that I think a lot of volunteers face when they start talking about diversity is being unprepared or feeling inadequate to tackle that. And at the chapter level, there's a couple things that I recommend when you want to kind of dip your toe into learning to be more diverse and inclusive. And one of the things that I say to chapters is just to be welcoming. It can be as simple as asking chapter members to wear name tags at chapter meetings in case somebody new joins you and they don't know who you are. In my experience in TU chapters and state councils, and even nationally, most TU folks have been around a while. Like, you know, of you guys, how many of you have been coming here for at least 2 years? At least 5 years? 10 years? Were any of you here when the chapter started? Yeah, okay. And this is fabulous. This is like round of applause, right? Thank you, Henry. This is fabulous, right? But in reality, when you've been involved in an organization for a while, you know, you kind of forget about the new people. And it requires some awareness of your small talk, awareness of the time and the place of your meeting, awareness of the accessibility of your chapter events. And you don't always recognize the barriers to involvement. And it's not always easy for me to bring it up, even when I am like the diversity speaker. Even now, it's not easy to bring up because I don't want to make current members feel like they've done anything wrong. Like we are taking new steps in the future to try new things. But sometimes we have to think about things like the types of jokes that we tell and the terms that we use. A perfect example of this for me is the term fish porn. We used to say fish porn all the time. You know, like when you have really great fishy pictures, your fish porn. And that's a term that might not necessarily be welcoming to everybody or might make somebody feel uncomfortable. And there are so many ways to say that same thing without using those types of terms. So trying to come up with ways that we can talk that make everybody feel welcome is a pretty easy way to start that. Another thing that you can do at the chapter level is consider the different types of folks that you might want to include in your chapter events. and then brainstorm barriers to their involvement. So you have to think about who your target market is for your chapter. Like, are you going to try to target women? Well, then make sure that your events are held in a place that's welcoming to women. If you don't know what that is, you can ask women for feedback. Well, we'll tell you, right? You know, right? I have a great story for you. It's a terrible story, but it's a story for this point. I went to a chapter meeting. I won't tell you what chapter it was. And I had actually left a business meeting before that. So I was wearing my little suit, my little blazer and skirt and heels. And I walked into this meeting location, which was a kind of seedy bar. And the bartender looked me up and down and then walked around the counter over to me and said, "Did you shave your legs today?" And ran his hand up the outside of my leg. And I was like, okay, I'm a very powerful lady. So I wasn't going to cry and run away. Luckily, one of the TU members in the chapter saw this happen and they grabbed me and took me in the room. And I said, so this is a great example of a place that might not be welcoming to a woman. If this was my first interaction with TU, if I saw your flyer for your meeting and I came in, I probably wouldn't come back. So, that's obviously a blatantly obvious example of a place that's not appropriate. But there may be things that make women feel more comfortable or less comfortable in any given venue. Another example, younger members under 21. Obviously, you can't have your place exclusively in bars. Bars and restaurants like here are great because anybody can come here. But this does still feel kind of like a bar atmosphere. This may not make a 18-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old feel like they can come in and hang, Same thing, if you don't know what it is to make a place that's comfortable, ask them what they're into, what would make things easier for them to participate. With the 20 to 40-year-old crowd, which I'm, right smack dab in the middle of this, consider that some of these folks are really going to be focused on either their careers or their families or both. So you might want to make sure that your events are held at family-friendly places, family-friendly events specifically. I personally, as a mom with 2 kids, I'm much more likely to go to a place where they say, yeah, bring your kids. We're going to have stuff for kids to do too. Rather than telling my poor husband, hey, I'm taking the day off. You've got the kids. I'm going to go do this volunteer thing. Career-based people, evening meetings are great. For a lot of retirees, it's easy, I think, for you guys to schedule stuff during the day. But a lot of people can't come during the business day if they can't get away from work. This next thing here is something that we don't really talk about very much in diversity, but it absolutely fits in with Trout Unlimited in my experience, is economic diversity. So fly fishing isn't always known as being the most financially friendly sport, as my credit card and my husband will tell you. There's plenty of expensive things that you can spend your money on in fly fishing. So keep in mind that your target market, if you're trying to, whoever you're trying to approach here, they may not have a bunch of money to drop on a new fly rod or a fly rod at all. So try to keep your presentations and your outings appealing to folks in all different economic situations and make it clear that if they don't have the gear that they need, that you have it or someone here will loan it to them. And we're very happy to do that. So what other target markets do you think you would engage? And you don't have to tell me right now. Maybe you don't know. You might have to let this marinate a little while. But think about who you would want to join your chapter. And then if you don't know how to make it more welcoming for them, just ask them. You can just ask them. Say, what barriers are there that are keeping you from being more involved? So to kind of implement these things, your chapter could find some folks that are interested in serving on a diversity committee. But for most chapters, in my experience, your active volunteers are already tapped out and you don't want to burn anybody else out. So if you don't have the people to form a diversity committee, you could add a standing diversity item to your chapter agenda and just discuss that every time that you guys get together and start seeing about how you can make these kind of incremental changes to make yourself more welcoming and more open to new people. So just stay focused on being welcoming, stepping into those shoes of your target markets and seeing how you could make things easier for people to be involved. And then you'll open the door for a more diverse membership. Now, of course, I'm most well-versed in gender diversity in fly fishing, which is how I got this position. I never felt like I was particularly well-versed in all the other types of diversity. I've been working on learning more about that. And I would never presume to speak for all women. So that's my disclaimer here. I'm not speaking for all women, okay? But that being said, here are some basic tips for you all, for the gentlemen here, if you'd like to take a woman fishing. So just ask. Don't be shy. She might say no, but she might be more interested in learning about it. We're all different, but we're equally capable. So Find out the comfort level and the goals of the people that you're taking fishing. This is not a woman-specific thing. Men have different goals too. Some people, men and women alike, are laser focused on getting on fish, and that's it. I am there. I have nailed down my wader, stringing up my rod routine to 7.5 minutes, and I'm in the water, and then you're on the fish, right? Or maybe you like to take your time. You want to catch up with your friend you haven't seen in a while. You ease into the water, you're reading the water, you're talking, you're identifying the bird or the tree or the flower, and you fish a while, and then you sit and you have a picnic. There's a whole scale here of different types of people. But before you take somebody out, male or female, ask them, what are your goals here? What would you like to do? Help us at first, but let us fly. This is a really big one. I have had many, many well-meaning guys fish with me, and they end up doing everything for me. My first 50 fishing trips were basically guided trips with one person because they wanted to help me. But what happened is that I didn't actually learn how to do anything on my own. So in order for me to become an independent angler, I had to tell them, no, don't do that for me. I need to do this myself. So teach your people that you're taking fishing what they need to do, and then give them a chance to do it. Let them fly. If they screw up, you'll be there to help them, but give them a chance to do it on their own. Check out some of the new gear. This is a big one. There are many companies now making gear for women. In the last 10 years, this area of fly fishing gear has just exploded. It's fantastic, seriously. From waders to boots to sling bags that don't squish our boobs when we're casting. I mean, these companies have taken our feedback and they are running with it. Some of my favorite companies are Orvis, Patagonia, and Miss Mayfly waders. A lot of these companies are really catering to what women need to be comfortable on the stream. And that's also not just a woman thing. You guys also want to be comfortable. If your waders have a leak, you're not going to be out there for 8 hours. You got to be comfortable so you can stay out longer. And lastly, if your teaching method isn't clicking, try having somebody else do the teaching, or try one of our women's fly fishing clinics. Sometimes a spouse or a partner isn't the best person to teach you something. For example, when my husband tried to teach me how to drive a stick shift, I ended up rear-ending my own car in the driveway while driving his Jeep. It really didn't end up well. And so, of course, we had to find somebody else to teach me. And, now I can drive a stick. No problem. So that pretty much ends my diversity little spiel for you all. I would love to come talk to you if you have any specific questions about how you can kind of incrementally incorporate these things into your chapter. I feel really passionate about making TU a welcoming place. In reality, if we don't get more members, there's not going to be anybody to protect the streams that you love when you're not here. We need to get new blood in here to help us. So we're going to move on to the fishy part of my presentation, which I feel like is why you all are really here. And I should note so some of you guys before the meeting were asking where this was. This was taken in Northern California. And 1 minute after this picture was taken, the fish and I together jumped in the water. I was so hot. It was 105 degrees, and I could not handle it anymore. I finally caught the fish, and we both jumped in. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the first person to dive off the front of a drift boat, and fully clothed, The pursuit of fish makes for some great stories, and I'm going to share with you some of my favorites. As I mentioned earlier, I never really pictured myself as an angler. I got that rod as a gift and the scholarship to fly fishing school, and I learned about it. And luckily, I have a little bit of natural ability, which I think I got from my grandfather. But when I caught my first fish on a fly rod, there's a tiny little brookie over here. You can't really see her. The look of love on my face says it all. First of all, they told me that she had pink polka dots, but I did not really believe it until I saw her. Then I was afraid to touch her because I didn't want to hurt her. And then I was like, well, I'm going to dedicate all of my life to protecting these streams so that there can be more of you here. And I am following in the footsteps of my late grandfather, and who loved trout fishing on the fly, and also a lot of talented angling women over the decades. My love for fly fishing also got me some great photo gigs in the industry for work, where I got to travel, and then I was also able to wet a line. So as you can see in this photo, I edited my luggage tag to more accurately reflect the contents of my suitcase. It now says, careful, my wading boots are in here. I also felt like that might prevent somebody from peeking in there, because who wants to find smelly wading boots? But without any further ado, some of my favorite fish tales. Idaho. So this trip was in December. It was a shoot for Midcurrent and for the Idaho Visitors Bureau. And I was doing photos of a bunch of the spring-fed creeks and streams and the resorts kind of along the way. And we were on the Bear River and the surrounding tributaries over there. And after the shoot was wrapping up, the journalist asked me if I wanted to fish a bit. And I couldn't squeeze into those neoprene waders fast enough. I actually had a broken foot at the time. I had a walking boot on my foot. And I was like, well, it's cold water. It'll be like an ice pack. So I took that boot off, put on the waders, and headed in. And the journalist said, this was my first time fishing in an area with cutthroat. And so I was pretty excited about that. And he said, well, just so you know, because he could already tell I was like an excitable person. He said, just so you know, the Lahontan cutthroat here are purple. And I was like, well, no, they're not. He's like, it's a purple fish with the orange fins. And I was like, no, you're lying, orange throat. So I caught her, could not handle the excitement, fell in the water. So you can actually tell in this picture, this like half of my waders are wet, the sleeve is wet. I didn't fall in catching her, like we netted her. I saw her, fell in with excitement. It was amazing. I should have blown up this fish here. You cannot even really tell how purple she was. It blew my mind. I also picked up my first tenkara rod out there. And I love that I was able to pop it in my briefcase for the flight home. Do any of you guys here fish tenkara? Yeah. It's pretty. It's a pretty fun thing and really interesting for someone who travels a lot. It was really easy to just pop that right in my briefcase and really made this more accessible for me. California. I won this trip actually through a series of successful March Madness bets. Go Badgers. And it was only a 2-day trip. So I thought that I would be brilliant and I would ship my waders and my boots out ahead of time so I could just carry my carry-on bag and my rod tube. Oh, this would be great. So after some crazy flight delays, I found myself sprinting through LAX with my little carry-on and my rod tube. And I get to the airplane and I have under boob sweat and I'm fanning myself like with the emergency instructions on the airplane, you know. So when we finally get to Reading, I go to pick up my box and the box is empty with a note that says it was damaged in shipping. And I was like, where are my new waders? Where are my boots? What am I going to do? So luckily, I found a sporting goods store that opened early the next morning. And I grabbed a pair of last season's discount corkers and I put them on. And then I wet waded in Hat Creek and the McLeod. I mean, what is a girl going to do when she finds herself, you know, facing some world-class trout streams and a sundress? So here I am, wet wading in very inappropriate gear. Florida. This is on the Gulf Coast. This trip was fantastic. I was working for the Captiva Island Visitor Center and shooting with an author for 2 days out there. And I packed all of my camera gear, everything I needed for shooting in saltwater. But I found myself unprepared clothing-wise when I was wet wading in the swamps with my sandals, but they had snakes and horseshoe crabs. I did not know there were going to be snakes and horseshoe crabs there. I did get to fish myself at the end of the second day of working. And I looked out from the shore. I was like just walking on the beach and I saw these ladyfish jumping everywhere. They're such an acrobatic fish. Have any of you guys fished for ladyfish before? Yeah. This was like just an experience. They were so strong. So when I finally hooked into one with my 7-weight, I had this experience that I hope you guys are all familiar with. That zing that your reel makes when a fish takes off. And this was the first time this had happened to me. So I hook into this fish, zing, and I stand there frozen. Zzz, and I'm looking around like, can someone help me? Zzz, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. And the author was standing there and he said, put your hand on the reel. So I figured it out. Obviously, I caught one. I caught several. This is a picture of me gracefully holding a ladyfish here, as I did not expect it to be as strong as it was, trying to make its getaway. So I had set my camera on the shore, and this was the journalist, or the author. He took that picture of me. Yeah, right? I know. And then I also caught some jacks, which I loved. I thought that yellow tail was just phenomenal. I also like how my manicure shows off the blue of the fish. Yeah, this was like just the one that showed off my nails the best. So then it was kind of funny because I got home from the trip and I showed my grandpa some pictures of me with these big fish that I caught. And at the time, he was 90. And he said to me, "You got a dress on?" And I was like, "Yeah, always a dress." I was back in Florida last year on the ocean side between Miami and the Keys. And traveling with my 2-year-old is challenging, but it's worth it. That kid has already had more travel experiences than I did in my first 25 years. And our guide was wonderful. If you guys are ever down there on that in Southern Florida and you'd like a guide recommendation, I'm happy to share who I've worked with. We've gone out with him several times whenever we get down to Miami, which that's our go-to spring break spot. But after we were following the tide through some mangroves, we spotted a mama and a baby tarpon. And I was like, this is my chance. This is it. I'm going to get that tarpon. And I was so proud because I had so much, I practiced so much on my double hauling, right? And so I'm double hauling and I'm trying not to get the fly caught. And those mangroves, I swear that those leaves are just grabby. It's like I swear they reach out and grab your fly if you get close to it, you know? And so I nailed the presentation. I got that fly right in there, underneath there. Perfect. And I went to pull the slack out and start stripping, and I stripped it right out of the mama tarpon's mouth. She was just going for it. I pulled it right out. And I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, all this work all day for this tarpon and I missed it. And I thought there's no way if I cast back there, the mom's gone. The baby's probably following the mom. So I half-heartedly went again. And sure enough, the baby took it. And so, oh my God, I was so excited. So we got the baby tarpon in. Here we are. I am obviously happy as a clam. And the best part about the trip is that Teddy here driving with me saw this whole thing happen. And for the rest of the trip, he told everyone that we saw. So like the valet at the hotel, the housekeeping, everybody on the beach. Mama caught a big fish. It's like, I didn't even need to brag for myself. He was bragging for me. I highly recommend bringing a toddler with you if you want someone to brag about your fishing experiences. This is a defining moment in my fly fishing career. This is the collision of my love. This is my husband, Brian, with his first fish on the fly. And we learned to fly fish at the same time at that school by the Frank Hornberg chapter. But as you've likely noticed, I had way more opportunities to fish, and I got more interested in it more quickly. And we headed out to a stream in Wyoming. We were camping in the bighorns out there. We strung up our rods. We got ready to go. And then Brian said, "Can I borrow a fly?" And I was like, "What? I have to share my flies?" Like, these were all given to me by my favorite TU people, or learned after many hard hours of work at the tying bench. I have to give you a fly, and I'm an only child. So I was like, I have to share. And so I thought about it for a second, and then I was like, yeah, I love you. You can have a fly. So not only I didn't give him like the worst fly, I showed him how he would figure out what fly to use and let him pick his own fly. And spoiler alert, he caught a trout. So that trip was also awesome because we hadn't fished together in several years, during which I was going on all these adventures. So he saw me cast and was like, well, that's accurate. I was able to impress him, you know, and after 10 years, that was kind of nice. I mean, we're rounding the corner on 15 years now, but I'm still trying to surprise him whenever I can. So this is from that same trip in Wyoming, and I think you guys will all laugh very hard about this, but this was very old-fashioned for this millennial. You know, instead of like Googling or Instagramming or like looking on my GPS to find a good spot for fishing, I looked at a map. That's like a big deal. I looked at a map, a real paper map, and I was like, okay, what here looks like it would be fishy? And so I picked the spot that I thought would be fishy. And guess what? It was fishy. It was super fishy. And so then I got home and I went to my home TU chapter and I was telling them about this, and they said, well, where was it? And I showed them on the map, and they said, well, that's the South Fork of the Tongue, which is like well known for being fishy. Have any of you fished that before? Yeah, so clearly everyone fishes this. If I had asked, someone would have told me this is the place to go. But anyway, I found it on my own, and I am calling that a proud moment. Colorado was the first state that I chose to go by myself on an independent woman fishing trip. It was supposed to be a time that I was going to go find myself, whatever that means, you know, build my confidence. So the first day that I was there, I went out with a friend who's a guide out there, so I could get some tips about where to go and, you know, mountain stuff. Unfortunately, we were skunked. And he's a guide. So I was like, well, he knows what he's doing. What am I going to do out here? So I spent the night drinking some great Colorado beer, kind of hunkered down. I had, like, honestly, a pretty shitty attitude. It's like, I'm never going to catch anything out here. So the next morning I went out, and I knew I needed an attitude adjustment because bad mood doesn't help anybody. Plus, I was in Colorado fishing. It wasn't working. I wasn't being a mom. I was like, okay, do it. You can do it. Shape up, get a grip, get on some fish. I did some yoga, did some deep breathing. That's what you're seeing here, yoga and deep breathing. So I think this story will be very familiar to you. So I walked out of the river, and I tried this spot. Looked super fishy. No luck. So I tried a new spot. No luck. So I changed my fly. No luck. So I changed flies, and I went to a new spot. And I scared of snakes, which also scared me, but I had no luck. So I tried a dropper, and then I lost both flies in a tree. But luckily, that tree was filled with all these other flies. So at least I felt like, well, it's not just me. And also, there must be fish in here because I'm not the only person that's getting hung up here. So I tried not to be frustrated, but I didn't know what fly to use. So I tried a hopper, and I had no luck. A caddis? I don't know. So before I had a chance to cast, I saw this little hummingbird fly by, and she made this cute little sound. And I thought, okay, I'm going to take this brave walk across this fast stream. You know, I held onto a dead tree to get to this good spot. And I cast once, I cast twice. And on the third cast, there was a flash and a strike. Hallelujah. I pulled in the prettiest brown trout, and I burst into tears. I lost it. I snapped. I think it was like the stress and the pressure, you know. No one wants to fly out to a new state and a new region on your own. And, you know, everyone's wanting to hear about your trip when you come home and be like, come home empty-handed. So relief washed over me. Thank goodness. I fooled one. I mean, it may be a face only a mother could love, but I loved it anyway. And as a woman angler, I feel a lot of pressure to do well. I feel like I'm representing all women when I'm out there. Like, if I don't do well, people are going to be like, well, yeah, look at Heidi. Like, women can't fish. So I feel a lot of pressure to do well. And I really have to shake that feeling, you know. I mean, how many of you guys think that you're real anglers? Are you like real anglers? Right? This is like a fishing thing. It's like we're all like, I don't know, we're doing our best, right? But you want to do well. So anyway, I remember having this feeling as a runner too, actually. It took me a long time to feel like I was a real runner. I'd run several marathons, and I was like, I don't know if I'm a real runner. Like, you're a real runner. And that's a great segue into my next adventure, which is the flyathlon. Have you guys heard of the flyathlon before? The flyathlon is a race in Saguache, Colorado. It's about 4.5 miles southwest of Denver. And it's a fundraiser for the Western Native Trout Initiative through a charity called Running Rivers. And instead of a traditional triathlon where you swim, bike, and run, the flyathlon is trail run, fly fish, and drink whiskey. And it sounds kind of fun, like a color run or a bubble run, but it's actually like really effing hard. So there's a 7 or a 12-mile option. You start at 8,000 feet, and then you head up to 12,000 feet, and you come back down. And during the race, you have to carry all your fly fishing stuff with you. And the trail that you're running on kind of runs next to and crosses a trout stream. So somewhere along the race, you have to decide what you think looks fishy and stop and string up your rod and catch a trout. And then take a picture of the trout on your race bib, which is like a waterproof paper, and then finish the race and head back down. So there's a lot of strategy about that because the fastest people get to the best fishing spots most quickly. And you get points for each inch of fish, and you get double points for native fish. So the places where the native fish are harder to get to and farther. So there's real strategy here. And it's really fun, you know, when you're running this race. It's hard, right? I'm like everyone that lives there does great. We're standing at the start line, and I'm like breathing heavy already because it's just 8,000 feet. But, you know, you're running the race, and I saw the aid tent, like all the way up there. It's like this little yellow tent. And I was like, oh, I just got to get up there, and they'll help me. And I get all the way up there, and it's just 3 fishy dudes, a dog, and a selection of whiskey. And they're like, we can give you fishing tips. You can pet the dog. We've got a rye. We've got bourbon up here. What would you like? So you take some whiskey, and then you head back down and say, don't fall, don't fall, don't fall, as you run down all those rocks. So this wasn't my first flyathlon. I obviously was having a good time. I did catch a fish on my second cast, which is great because I'm slower than all those runners that live at altitude. So thank God. I mean, I finished in the top quarter of people and I ran slow. So that was, thank God. I met this guy up there. His name's Kelly. We are now good friends. I see him every time I go to Denver. We drink whiskey together and now we go fishing. So it's great. In Saguache in Colorado. So I've done the triathlon 4 times. This is my most recent one last year. I was actually pregnant with Benji when I ran this race. And I netted a teeny tiny brookie at the end. I was desperate. I had tried 4 different places. And every time you do it, you string up your rod, you fish, you fish, you fish, you fish. You're like, holy frick, everyone's passing me. I'm going to be here all day. You take it all down, you run some more. So finally, I was near the start. I was coming back. And there were these beaver ponds. And I was like, all right, that's going to be it. And I found this teeny brookie. And then Teddy met me at the finish with a bouquet of roses. It was the best race ever. There is a driftless flyathlon in Iowa, and it's modeled after the one in Colorado. I consider myself so lucky to have been able to spend a week at a private cabin in Montana as an artist in residence. And there was no power, and there was no water, and there was no cell service. It was dreamy. I mean, honestly, it took me a couple of days to like unplug because I feel like since I was born, I've been plugged into the digital world. So it takes a while for me to unwind. But then I spent all my time doing photos and fly fishing and yoga, drinking coffee. It was awesome. I planned on getting a cover photo for a book that the author was writing, but the wildfires were actually so bad when I was there that the peaks of the mountains that he wanted photos of were really hidden. So I spent a lot of time doing my underwater photography. And while this brookie isn't quite as beloved out west as she is here because she's not native there, I love her. Brookies are my favorite, as evidenced by the brook trout tattoo on my foot. I think native fish are the bomb. On this trip, I actually lost my beloved fishing net when the screw came out of it on the bungee. And I didn't notice it till I went back to reach for it to net a fish. So I did a contactless release and then sprinted downstream about 200 yards and found my net hooked up in the roots of a tree. Hallelujah. I cried with joy. I was so happy. I didn't have a spare one and I was in the middle of nowhere, so I didn't know what I would do without a net. So you can see actually in that photo on the left, there was a lot of smoke out there. And it caused so many issues for so many people. A lot of my photos out there really indicate how bad the wildfires were. And living in Wisconsin, I'm not very familiar with wildfires. So I'm thankful that for all the local folks there that educated me on where it was safe to fish and where it wouldn't hurt the fish because of the high temperatures from the fires. And I now consider myself very lucky that I don't worry about my home burning down. I send good vibes to everybody who worries about that. But I spent so much time laying in the streams on this trip that I made friends with all these like slimy critters. What a good sign of a healthy stream, right? He was so cute. Some other time, maybe over a few beers, I'll tell you the story about how I got pulled over in Darby, Montana, and I found myself sitting in front of a judge in a courtroom out there. And maybe lots of beers. So you might be wondering, how do I take photos like Heidi's? I mean, of course, I'm a professional. But I do have some quick tips to help you find some creative ways to capture your upcoming fishing trips. So try a new perspective. Imagine thinking like a bird or a fish or a squirrel. Right now, many of the pictures that you take are probably from 6 foot 1 inches high, and that's your perspective. This photo was published in a magazine, and I literally laid on the ground next to the stream and then reached out with my camera right above the surface of the water to capture it. It's just a stream, like any other, but it looks pretty cool. Think big. Take wide photos that show the whole scene, that show everything that you're looking at, that show the stream, that show the riparian vegetation, that show the trees, wherever you are. Think small. Take close-up photos of little things. If you were going to tell the story of your trip to somebody who doesn't know fly fishing, what would you want to take pictures of to show them? And take pictures of that. I love taking pictures of everything on my trips, not just for fun, but because I don't have that great of a memory. So I have a large collection of photos of chewed up flies in my hand so that I remember what fly was working really well on any given trip. I can look back through my photos and be like, oh yeah, that was the kicker. Move your body. And like maybe not like this. In fact, I don't think I'm like legally allowed to recommend that you go jumping off of rocky cliffs. But moving your body is the second best way that you can avoid glare in your photos. You can't move the sun and you can't move the stream, so you can only move yourself. So If you're having a lot of glare in your photos, try taking a few steps one way or the other. Try squatting down. The best way to avoid glare in your photos is with a polarizing filter, which works just like our polarized lenses on our sunglasses. Charge your batteries. This seems obvious, but there's really nothing worse than having something photo worthy and grabbing your camera, you know, like the largest fish you've ever caught in your life, and you go to grab your camera and the battery's dead. Charge your batteries. This photo just shows the creative use of my packing space in my camera bag, because I was shoving my reels in there too, because I didn't have enough space in my luggage. This tip falls in the category of be prepared. You guys know that. But you never know when something beautiful is going to happen, so charge your batteries. Don't self-edit on the stream. Memory is really cheap. Memory cards are cheap. Don't go through your photos and delete anything when you're out there. This accidental selfie was taken with cold, wet hands while I was trying to handle a net and a fish, and it's one of my husband's favorite pictures of me. So just wait till you get home on your computer to look at your photos before you delete any. You might find a gem that you missed on the stream, and don't delete it. Use the rule of thirds. Have any of you heard of this before? This is a pretty standard photography rule. Imagine this guide like a tic-tac-toe board on your photos. And some cameras even have this as an option in your viewfinder to turn this on. So you want to keep interesting parts of your photo on the lines with a bonus if they're taking place in an intersection of the lines. Shoot what you see. Take photos of the whole process. Your perspective is unique. You're going to see things differently than I do. And I think that there's no doubt in this photo that my toes look much prettier than the guide's toes. Guide feet are gross. Never look too closely at your guide's feet. Of course, I'm going to tell you to go waterproof. The last thing that you want to worry about when you're fishing is dropping your camera or your phone in the water. Pick up a waterproof camera or a waterproof case, and you'll have one less thing to worry about. Plus, you can get pretty cool shots underwater. I took all of the underwater photos in this presentation tonight with a $300 Panasonic shockproof waterproof camera that I bought at Best Buy. You know, if I drop it, it'll be fine. I'm more worried about the fish. I'm more worried about my rod. Tie it to you, you'll be fine. There's a big movement in fly fishing that I support called Keep 'em Wet. I don't know if you've heard about this before. It's focused on safe fish handling techniques, and it's kind of moving us away from our more traditional grip and grin photos and into photos where we don't put the fish at more risk than necessary. This is obviously more important if you practice catch and release fishing. If you're going to take your fish home and eat it, you can keep it out of the water as long as you want. But if you're intending on letting the fish go, you don't want to keep them out any longer than necessary. So underwater photography and fish in the net photography is really having a resurgence. This is a really fun underwater photo of a trout. Can you believe this is a driftless trout? The way that the stream color with the sun shining in, I feel like this looks tropical. Also, I don't know how often you guys are sticking your head underneath those driftless streams, but it's what they look like. So I'm happy to share my adventures with you guys anytime. I hope you'll share your adventures with me. If you can handle lots of smiles and happy dances and occasionally jumping in the water, then you're ready to fish with me. I mean, that's my MO. So please invite me along to fish with you. I'd love to fish with you all. I love learning from new people and trying new things. I might try to weasel you out of your fishing secrets, but I promise to try to take cool pictures of you fishing while we're at it. So what questions do you have for me? Any? Yeah, I usually use that shockproof camera, but sometimes I do use my phone because it is just easier. I keep my phone in a waterproof pocket in my waders right here, so it's easy to reach. So I kind of use both, but my phone is also waterproof, so I don't worry about that too much.
So how big is your camera?
I should have brought it. It's about this big, little. It's like a little point and shoot, shockproof, waterproof camera.
Okay.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. Any other questions? That's it. All right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the women's fly fishing clinics every June in Madison. Yep. Yeah, they book up. They're always in the same place. They book up really quickly, usually by January, February, March every year they're booked up. So I recommend to have people sign up early. Yep, yeah. And there's primarily women instructors there. So for people who'd like to get interested and would feel more comfortable learning from a female instructor. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's a great time and a really fun group of ladies. I can definitely attest to that. All right. Well, if there's no further questions, then I'm done. I'm going to feed that baby. Thanks, guys. I'm happy to do that. That is my MO.